Welcome to the Rankings Podcast, where we feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and elite personal injury attorneys and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Chris Stryer here, CEO and founder of Rankings.io, where we help elite personal injury attorneys dominate first page rankings. You're listening to the Rankings Podcast, where I feature top business owners, entrepreneurs, and elite personal injury attorneys. Speaking of elite personal injury attorneys, I have Joe Zarzaur on the show today. Joe is the founder of Zarzaur Law, a personal injury firm based in Pensacola, Florida. He is a board-certified civil trial lawyer, a distinction that only 1% of Florida attorneys can claim. His career in the courtroom has seen him win record jury verdicts for injury cases in both Escambia and Santa Rosa counties. In addition to his board certification, Joe is also AV rated, a super lawyer, a member of the $1 Million Advocates Forum. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris. Appreciate it. This is fun.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, great to have you. Let's jump right in. So, how did you get started? Where did the idea come from to create Zarzaur Law?
I think everybody that works for a company fantasizes, I think, about having their own business, right, at some point in time. And sometimes it's a fleeting fantasy. Sometimes you're better off not having your own company, right? But I think there are personalities that are better on their own kind of thing. I had that kind of personality where I was like, okay, I think I was a decent, obedient employee as a lawyer. But at the same time, I'm opinionated, right? And I think I guess, unlike a lot of lawyers, I like business stuff. So I think a lot of lawyers and doctors and other professionals, accountants, they like their craft, and then the business is sort of second. I like my craft. Okay, don't get me wrong. I love it, right? But I like being a businessman too, an entrepreneur, an advertiser, a marketer. So I enjoy that aspect of this too. And I think what gave me the idea of thinking this was the right move for me was wanting to make all the decisions for the business and not be questioned about it, not have to go through layers of other people. I wanted to make this decision this way, and why don't we market it this way? I didn't want to have to ask somebody permission to do that. I wanted to just do it. So I think that's really what made the decision for me.
Yeah, and I think that's great. So you wanted to drive, you wanted to be innovative and explore unique opportunities that you probably saw weren't being applied to the firm you're at previously, right. And you wanted a little bit more control. So what were those early days of the firm like? How were you hustling to get those clients in the early days?
Well, they're scary, right? You're scared to death. You look back at bills that used to make you like cringe, and you're thinking, geez, my gosh, I wish I had that kind of American Express business bill now, right? It's like, I was like worried about $3,000 a month on my American Express business card. So, but yeah, I remember being scared to death. I remember thinking to myself, how am I going to make it? I think it helped me when I went out on my own that I wasn't married at the time. I didn't have a child at the time. And so it was less scary. I didn't have a ton of student loan debt at the time. I had retired most of that. I didn't have a lot of other debt. So I think that makes it a lot easier for people when they go out on their own to not have personal debt and personal concerns, or as many as a lot of people have, right? So it makes the decision and makes the risk a lot less. You're not just you're only risking you, right? You're not risking people at home that are counting on you, creditors that are counting on you to pay your bills. If you have a bunch of debt already, it made it a lot easier for me to branch out and just go.
So it would be fair to say Dave Ramsey would be really, it's kind of the Dave Ramsey approach. You didn't carry a lot of debt. You got to make moves and make your cash work for you.
I don't know that I agree with everything Dave Ramsey says, but
I don't think we all do.
but the whole debt thing, I think the less debt you have in general in the world, the more free you are to make decisions.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. So, taking it to the next level, you started acquiring cases, you started building your brand. Is there a big turning point, maybe a case that settled or a marketing initiative that you did that really took it to the next level?
Absolutely. In this business, in the trial lawyer business, you really don't know for sure you're good at this until you get a big verdict. You can settle 1,000 cases, right? And you can settle them for millions and millions of dollars. But until a jury, after hearing you present your case, gives your client millions and millions and millions of dollars, I don't know that you know that you've made it in this profession until that happens. And until that happens over and over again, you may think it's an anomaly, right? So that is what gave me confirmation. Until that time, even though I loved what I did, and even though I felt like I did it better than average, I didn't have that validation that a jury had awarded my client millions and millions of dollars. And until that happened, I didn't feel like I had validation. So I would constantly be thinking, well, I like doing this, and I feel like I can make some money, and I feel like I'm really good, and I feel like I'm better than average. But maybe I should do something else, like sports marketing or sports agency, or do this, do that. And until you really get that verdict that says, no, dude, you only 0.2% of lawyers in this business get this kind of number verdict. You are doing what you're supposed to do, right? So that gave validation. Verdict.
Yeah, absolutely. Validation and confidence. I'm sure there's just a ton of confidence and momentum that built from that. And then you can, I guess, leverage that giant case result for marketing, marketing and referral potentials. So,
big deal.
Very few successful business owners get to where they are without making some mistakes. Are there any mistakes that come to mind that you learn from?
Daily. I'm a professional mistake maker, actually. I just try to make less mistakes than I don't, and then I also try to fix them when I do. Right? Mistake-wise, my God, there's so many. Let's just take maybe the biggest mistakes I've made is joining up with firms along the way without making sure I had an ironclad understanding in writing about how we were going to split fees. So if you do joint prosecutions with firms and everybody's buddies and whatever, everybody's happy. And in this business, it's everything's contingency related, right? So nobody really gets paid until the case is over. Everybody's working towards the same goal. Nobody realizes there's money until there's money. And what happens is we all are working towards that recovery. And then when it happens, everybody's like, well, everybody's got an inflated impression of what they did to get the money, right? Including me. So when the money's there is not the time to try to figure out how much you should get and how much you should get and whether this is a fair deal or not, right? So if I learned anything from the biggest mistake I made, the one that has cost me the most, is that when I have co-counsel in cases that I feel like are not pulling their weight, so to speak, and I feel like I'm giving more to the mix than they are, then I need to immediately address that before the recovery happens so that when and if the recovery does happen, there's not this big fight over it.
So those candid conversations right when you see them.
They're hard conversations to have, but they're a lot harder to have when the money's sitting in a trust account and we're all fighting over it. You know what I mean?
That makes sense. And that's something I haven't heard before, but I totally understand. And that's something just now that you've experienced that pain, now you can, you've learned from that situation. I'm sure that you're establishing those boundaries, those situations now in the future.
I'm a little militant about it now. Like I'm a little I overdo it too much. Like first phone call with somebody, they're referring a case. I'm very diligent about making sure everything's clear. In an email, as soon as we get off the phone, Here's what we decided, right? Here are the percentages. Here's what we decided. Put it in writing. Done, right? And then if something changes, I immediately address it. As uncomfortable as it may be, I may say, listen, I'm starting to take a lot more depositions than I thought. I think we should revisit these numbers.
That makes sense. And I would say that probably even that experience kind of relates to those hiring situations where instead of pushing stuff off, you're probably addressing those situations more early. It's kind of a similar type of thing.
No doubt, yeah. Staffing is by far, I think, the number one challenge of any business owner is getting good staff, keeping them, and weeding out the ones that aren't going to ever make it. A lot of businesses, I think, hire people and they're mediocre, but mediocrity doesn't ever push anybody to make any big decisions, one way or the other. They don't piss you off enough to get fired. They don't impress you enough to give them big bonuses. So they just sort of wallow around in mediocrity for years. Meanwhile, there's a candidate out there that could be taking that position to a whole nother level, right? And you're not doing that. And I know that's grass is greener on the other side kind of thing, but I'm a firm believer in that in the professional setting. Maybe it doesn't work in personal relationships, always looking for maybe a bigger, brighter, shinier object. But I do feel like if you don't want your staff to be mediocre, you don't want your brand to be mediocre, everybody in your facility needs to be doing their best to be better than that every day. And if they're not, bye-bye.
I totally agree. And the longer someone's with your company, the harder it is to have those conversations. So just addressing it early too makes it even easier from a personal feeling type of situation. So let's talk about the good. What's a proud moment that really stands out for you?
Of course, opening your own office is a big deal, right? Getting those verdicts are a big deal. I think being recognized as a board certified civil trial specialist by the Florida Bar is a big deal because you don't get that. It doesn't come along easy. There's like 90,000 lawyers in Florida and 1% of those have this certification. And I think that was a big deal. Being recognized in the community as someone that cares about the community with awards that applaud the amount of work we do in the community helping people is important to us also. I think I've gotten a lot of employees that have worked out and that ended up going elsewhere, bigger and brighter things, have written some I've kept them over the years, really nice notes that said to me, you helped me grow into a better worker, human, blah, blah, blah. I think those are things that matter. And then, of course, clients that are thankful about their cases. And that's a weekly thing. It makes me like, I have to catch my breath every time that happens because when I read these things, I forget. I'm like, my God, I am having an impact on people's lives, right? In a positive way. And of course, I'm not out here saving lives, with my hands. But at the same time, I'm making lives a little bit better that have been pretty much destroyed, right? Or messed up pretty bad. So those things mean a lot.
Yeah, that's incredible. And just you get to feel their happiness and just make an impact, like what you said, on their lives. These people, they have these serious injuries and you can help their family. They're the next generation in some situations. So next, let's talk about what it takes to build a successful law firm. What marketing initiatives should growth-minded attorneys invest in?
Personal injury lawyers is what I can really speak to. And I can tell you this, that I don't think you can just invest in one medium. You have to be sort of like a shotgun approach. You've got to, if you're going to be on TV, you almost have to be in billboards. If you're going to be in billboards, you got to be in Google AdWords or some other internet search thing, right? I think everybody wants to use their phone to contact everybody, including lawyers. And if you're not accessible on your phone, right, they may know who you are. They may know your name. They may remember your name. But when they go through a traumatic event, they're going to forget for a second, right? And what they need to do is to be reminded who you are again. And the best way to do that, fortunately or unfortunately, is SEO and Google AdWords. Because they're going to search Google, they're going to do some kind of search. And ideally, you want them to see your ad on Google and think, oh, that's the TV ad I saw yesterday, or that's the billboard I saw yesterday. The more you can put the seed in their head, so when they go to look after an event, because it's almost like they have amnesia when the event happens, and then they, personal injury lawyer, and like, oh, wait, why didn't I think of that guy? That's the guy that I see all the time in the billboard. That's the guy I see on the television. They use Google as a way of looking it up, right? And I hate to say it, but Google controls a lot of that business. And unless your website is like top notch, which is a daily deal, like daily, you have to update the content, make sure the algorithm is the same, hadn't changed, whatever, tweak it here and there. You can't guarantee SEO is going to be at the top every time. So you got to do something else to make sure you're at the top. That's why Google AdWords, I think, is, they've got a sort of a monopoly going in a way.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So you've got your top of the funnel, whether you call that the no is no, like, trust, or awareness, engagement and consideration, whatever you talk about it, your TV, billboards, or that awareness. But then that's the brand equity play. So then when someone does type it in Google, you got to be able to show up for them to be able to convert.
Now, I do think that there is a way to get a mass volume of cases, which I just described. And there's also a way to get quality cases with people that are going to take time to hire a lawyer. They're not going to just put a Google search in and say, right, I remember that guy's name. They're going to want to say, well, let's compare his credentials to her credentials, and let's see who's actually better suited for our case. I'd rather have 3 quality cases than 30 my neck hurt cases, right? So yeah. Not only are those going to provide the internal satisfaction for the firm and for the client and for me for actually helping somebody that's in a really bad situation and helping the community by making a wrong right? But it's more valuable, right? 3 of those cases would take 40 my neck hurt cases, right? So, and I'm not making fun of or little of people's neck, because neck injuries are bad things, but what I am saying is non-herniated disc cases, cases where you can't show something in an objective film, but the person has soft tissue injuries, facet injuries perhaps. Those cases are just not as valuable as a neck surgery case, right?
Right.
You got to be doing both. You got to be appealing to the folks who may not research you very much, because there are good cases there too. But you also have to be making sure the people that are going to be smart about the process, that you're providing them the content they need to make intelligent decisions, and so that you appear and sound as different as you are.
I 100% agree. The multi-channel approach is, first of all, how you're getting your name out there, but it also complements each other. TV and billboards complement the SEO, because then you capture those clicks. And then the other thing, the higher your brand perception and expertise raises, the more likely you are to get those great cases through a referral too, just in a different avenue, not only directly from the consumer. So I 100% agree. And I think the multi-channel approach is what you have to do nowadays to capture attention.
Right. I can't agree with that more.
So next, let's shift to kind of like a personal development. What's one book that comes to mind that you would recommend?
That's a tough question. I try to read a lot of current events, I like nonfiction. Mm-hmm. For business purposes, Shoe Dog. Bill Knight wrote Shoe Dog, is the founder of Nike. I thought that was a great book. I read it about a year ago, but it sticks out from a business standpoint as one that I enjoyed a lot. Richard Haas just wrote a book called The World. It's brand new. I just started it a couple nights ago, but it seems like it's he basically calls it an introduction to the world. And it's almost like everybody that's coming through school should be required to read it, because it basically introduces you to every part of the world and what their interests are, right? And how they're different than ours, and how we can use that knowledge of everybody's differences to get along better, and to understand why people do things, right? So I think those two books would stick out for purposes of this conversation.
Yeah, I'm going to have to read The World, you said, and then Shoe Dog. I did read Shoe Dog, and it was kind of nice because it exposed the good and the bad kind of Nike's journey. So it was nice to see them like at a human level. What about mentors or influences? Is there a specific mentor that comes to mind that helped you develop your expertise?
I don't know that I have any one particular person, but there are lawyers in Florida that are older than me that I sort of, through my trade groups, the Florida Justice Association, we get together 2 or 3 times a year, and you just sort of, you put your eye on somebody, you're like, that dude's got it figured out, right? Or that lady's got it figured out. And so I've quietly watched people that, I don't really care to name, and I don't know that they would care for me to name them, and I've admired them from afar and thought to myself, maybe I can build my practice to be what theirs is, right? And this is the level of respect they command from their peers is so impressive that, it means more than any verdict, actually. The idea that your peers think that much of you is really success, right? If you, in any particular industry, if your peers respect your abilities to do that job, you've really succeeded, right? Regardless of how much money you have or how many boats and cars and planes you have, if you've gotten their respect, you've done something. Because there's a ton of people that make money in this business that have no respect. I just be honest with you. There's a lot of people that advertise and they get a lot of volume cases who I wouldn't hire to handle a speeding ticket, literally a speeding ticket trial. Like they have no clue what they're doing, right? But they're great marketers and they're great business people. But that doesn't mean anything when it comes to this trade, being a trial lawyer. So.
Yeah, and when you congregate with those people that are successful, it's kind of you kind of immerse yourself. You get ideas that maybe it leads to innovation, and I've seen that myself in our digital agency masterminds. I work with a different digital marketing company, and I'm like, whoa, that's a great idea. I need to implement that. Joe, one final question: is there anything you wanted to talk about we haven't discussed?
I think it's important for people to be physically healthy.
Yep.
One of the big things here at the firm is the firm does a required yoga session every week. I pay for their Y memberships. I encourage people, and the Y is just like right across the street from us, a brand new, sparkling, beautiful YMCA. And I encourage people to take I pay for them to take an extra long lunch if they're working out. So the women want to take a shower afterwards. I give them an hour and a half instead of an hour. I personally have to work out every day, or I don't feel like I'm ready to work. And I feel like the healthier people are physically, the more productive they're going to be, the happier they're going to be, the more mentally healthy they're going to be. It's just, the better they're going to be with their family, the better they're going to be with themselves. It's a priority. And I feel like businesses that don't put that as a priority for their staff are making huge miscalculations, because if you work them to death, right? And then you reward them with like beer, wine, and food, and you're not paying attention to and promoting their health and well-being, they're just going to crash and burn like you are at some point, right? Now, of course, I'm not saying I'm going to live forever, but, I'm going to be living until I drop, right? And so It may be a sudden kind of drop, but it ain't going to be one of those long extended sickness kind of drops. You get my drift?
I think that's a great piece of advice. And I know that my wife, if she's listening to this episode, is going to push me more on it. Yeah, so I 100% agree. And I applaud you for that. I think that's tremendous. That's a way better benefit than many of these other types of benefits you could provide as a business owner, besides just the standard health insurance and all those types of things. Guys, we've been talking to Joe, elite personal attorney at Zarzaur Law. Joe, where can we learn more about you?
Zarzaurlaw.com if you want to read my website or read about me. JoeZarzaur.com. And one of the first big verdicts I got, I saw a lawyer out at a retail store, and he said, "Man, you beat that lawyer." And that lawyer worked for Johnson & Johnson. And that lawyer hates your guts. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And that lawyer had been litigating against him for 10 years, and we went to trial. And the most he had offered was like $200,000, and the verdict was like $9.3 million or something. And of course the guy was pissed off. He had all his Ivy League, crew in the courtroom, and he was talking down to everybody, including the jury, the whole trial, using words that nobody understood, had to look up. And at the end of the case, he was telling people that he hated me, like he hates me for the verdict, right? And so I took that statement and I made it into an advertising campaign. I hate JoeZarzaur.com. And so I put that all around town, and people were like, "What the heck? What is that? I hate JoeZarzaur.com." And you go to the website and it explains that whole story about why this lawyer hates me, because I beat his, he and his client to oblivion and back. And so in any event, I hate JoeZarzaur.com is also a way to get my story.
That's great. We'll share that to our audience, and I'm gonna have to check that out right after this. Hey, Joe, it's been awesome having you on the show. Thanks so much.
I enjoyed it, Chris. Y'all take care. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Rankings Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.